This is the Authority Company Podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. And I'm Joe Pardavila, and today I've got Steve Smithwick on the show. Steve is the founder of Masterwall, a multi-million-dollar business he built from scratch with faith, grit, and zero formal training. In his book, Believer, Bulldog, Coach, he shares how perseverance, servant leadership, and staying true to your values can lead to lasting success in both business and life. From getting fired to becoming a coach and mentor, Steve's story is a masterclass in purpose-driven entrepreneurship. Steve, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm just right. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Oh, me too. And I'm glad you're just right. I'm just right too. And so I want to start by talking about a theory I have that entrepreneurial, like the entrepreneurial gene, is genetic. Like you see a lot of people who are entrepreneurs. They're entrepreneurs because people in their family, whether it's their mother or father or grandparents, like it's in the genes. And I've seen that a lot, Steve, doing these podcasts for 5 years. It's very few that I see that are just entrepreneurs on their own without having that history. And you're one of those. You became an entrepreneur where there wasn't entrepreneurs in your family. So tell me about what attracted you to that, because I have this running joke, Steve, that I say that entrepreneurs are psychopaths. Like it's like, pick the what's it, the path of least resistance. You guys picked the hardest, the path of hardest resistance. So tell me about what was it that sparked the entrepreneurial gene in your body?
You know, all my work life, I probably disagreed with people I work for most of the time. Now, I was obedient and did my job, but as life went along and things happened, I write in the book, matter of fact, I worked for this guy named Lonnie Pope. When I decided to leave him, one thing he said was, "Well, I hope you have a business of your own someday, Steve." I think he knew me well enough to know that I was pretty independent in my thinking. And so when I got fired, as I write in the book, I was motivated to take care of my family, of course, 4 kids and things like that. So it kind of lit this thing in me that, the independent thinking I had, along with needing to do something to survive, it just kind of came together, and here I am.
And the company you got fired for, was that Drivet?
Right, it's called Drive It. Yeah, DRYVIT, Drive It System Incorporated. Yeah.
And what were you doing to drive it?
I was plant manager there. They had moved me from the Marietta, Atlanta area down to Columbus, which is just 125 miles. Moved me and my family down here to open a plant for them for their southeastern production area. So that's why I moved.
And so you mentioned the fact that that you guys were butting heads a little too much. What was it that you learned from your experience there? Because I think a lot of people, whether you're an entrepreneur, you find mentors that you follow, like, or copy what they do. But then there are some, like, even in my career, I could be like, I've had mentors in my life where I'll be like, I don't want to do what they did. Like, I'll take the good stuff, but not the bad stuff. What was some of the stuff you learned there, that, like, the bad stuff where, like, if I'm the captain, to use the Captain Phillips, like, I will not do this. What were some of those things that you saw?
Well, it's probably in the way people are treated. I'm a pretty empathetic guy, and um, for instance, when I was working up in Marion, Atlanta, the job I had before I went to Drive It, I was pretty much manager of the production area, so I had my own way of doing things anyway. But I had people over me that instructed me and told me how to do other things. I'm probably more empathetic than most people that lead, and I was raised by a pretty strict father. He was pretty hardcore, and I probably became very conscious of not being that way because I kind of rejected that as I got older. And so I treat people much different. He always said when he watched me work, when he came to see me at the plant when I started Masterwall, he would tell me I was just too nice to people, and he would use terms like, "You really need to get up in their butts and tell them what to do." He said, "You got to make them respect you." I'm thinking, wow, that just doesn't make sense to me. They either respect you or they don't. I can intimidate them probably, but I don't think I can make them respect me. So anyway, that's a mix of how I got to be where I'm at. I'm probably considered a nice guy, and I like that. In fact, I tell people sometimes when they ask me questions about it, I didn't have any money, to start Masterwall. I was like, I got fired and I had to do something. And I got pretty creative. But one trait I might have had that might have helped was I was kind of likable, I think. And so I tell the story about I passed algebra 2 in high school because the teacher liked me. It was a social pass because I was likable. And that's kind of how I started Masterball. I formed relationships when I was at the other company with vendors and all. And so when it came time to ask for credit and get uh, credit, I think that helped me, my likability maybe.
That's great. So nice guys too. I'll finish last, Steve. That's good. So let me ask you this because it's something that I call and I'm sure I'm not the first one to coin this, but like the entrepreneur's conundrum: find the problem, fix the problem. So you're drive it. You're like, okay, this isn't working out for me. I'm gonna go on and start my own. What was the problem you identified, and how are you going to fix it with Masterwall?
Uh, well, that's a good question. They were a very good company, and they were the biggest at the time, and they were the first in the U.S. So I'd probably rather say they did so many things well. I wanted to be sure I could do those things. They took good care of people, paid a lot of bonuses. They had cash uh, available all the time because they were so successful. Um, other than that, I think I wanted to be more personable because they were getting so big. It was hard for them to be personal. And we say at Masterwall, we're big enough uh, to know your name and take care of you, but we're personal enough to be familiar with you. So,
So, folks not in that world, tell us what Masterwall is all about. Because a guy like me, you could tell, doesn't use his hands much. What do you guys do in Masterwall?
okay, we make a product. We don't sell it. Um, we don't put the product up. It's for construction. It's mainly exterior wall systems, and we sell it through distribution. But we manufacture wet goods and dry goods. We put them in 5-gallon pails and in bags, and the contractors take them to a job site, typically commercial. We're really big in the hospitality industry, hotels, and they put exterior claddings on that are Master Walls products. Trial them on usually and things like that. Sometimes spray apply, but usually trial.
So, explain, even dumb it down even further for me. See, I'm sure people listening know exactly what you're talking about, but you might as well be speaking to me in like in Chinese. What exactly is the product? Like, what is that Master Wall? What is that?
Well, it's what they call EIFS. It's an exterior insulation and finish system. One of the requirements in the U.S. now is continuous insulation, and we fit that mode. You have a substrate such as anything from plywood to Ben's glass, things like that. You typically adhere. Sometimes you mechanically fasten foam, 1 inch up to 4 inches of foam. You come over that with a fiberglass mesh, which is embedded in one of our products. So you can't see it, but it's there. Then you come over that with the color and the texture you want for the exterior of the building. That's
Wow.
the simple explanation of that.
It's so funny. Like, I think we all take engineering for granted. Like, you explaining that makes it way more complicated than we think it is. It's like, all right, just put a couple of 2x4s up, put some plywood, and you're good to go. Why is it got to be so hard, Steve?
Well, we have to pass codes and testing, and so everything has to be done in a certain way for it to perform properly, for it to meet requirements. So I guess they make it complicated so it performs right. A lot of testing goes into our products and products like ours.
That's awesome. And there's a lot to be said. I'm sure if you're up in the news, you heard about the tariffs and people, the aim to bring manufacturing back to the United States. You're actually manufacturing in the United States. How do you do it?
Well, we've got 3 manufacturing facilities, so we can cover the country real well. We have in Atlanta, we have in Lithonia, we have our original facility that we started in 1987, and we service most of the eastern United States with that. We have Brookshire, Texas, where we service the southeast and the Midwest. Then we have Payson, Utah, where we cover the western United States with that plant and manufacture there. So then we sell through distribution. We have distributions in virtually every state and sometimes several locations in states.
Wow. So give it to me straight. Like, because I think there is this prevailing attitude that there's no way you can manufacture in the United States, and I'm obviously speaking broadly here, Steve, because of the cost of labor. That's why a lot of stuff is sent overseas, Southeast Asia, all of that. We all know that. How are you able to maintain this company, 40, 50 years long, manufacturing in a country that has seen manufacturing just flee because of that cost of labor?
I like to think it's because of the way we take care of our people, because even on the floor where we're manufacturing, we have many employees that have been with us 20, 25 plus years. So I think we take care of them. We take care of the area they work in. It's not a dump. It's well taken care of. So they have a good surroundings. Um, and I just think we do a good job with our people, and they are good people. And we have very little turnover in our production area.
Hmm.
So
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you for explaining that. All right. So, one thing you write about in the book, and you've always been very upfront about this, is faith has been super important to yourself, the way you lead. You actually write that the Master Wall's mission statement is to seek God's guidance in all decisions. That's a lot of weight to put on your shoulders because we all know entrepreneurship is hard, but then you got the big guy upstairs. As a big driver for the company. Tell us how you balance that day to day.
well, it's not a hard balance because if you read the book, you see all the things that happen during these 35 to 40 years. And without a faith, I don't know how I would have gotten through it, but certainly I think he carried us through and got us through a lot of those challenges. And the last part of that mission statement, and to give him glory. So we seek his guidance and we give him glory when we feel like he led us through it and got us through it. And faith is very important. We don't consider ourselves a faith-based company necessarily, but anybody that's going to be hired by us has probably checked out our website and saw our mission statement, so they kind of know what we're about. So
That's great. All right, so Steve, I often like to, I'm sort of a lapsed Catholic from New Jersey, but I do like to tease leaders that have a strong faith because I often joke, I went to Catholic school, read the Bible. I don't recall any portion of the Bible that talks about how Jesus fired people or laid off hundreds of people or just, completely ruined people's lives because they decided to consolidate a company. Obviously, I'm speaking very tongue in cheek here, but
yeah.
how do you thread that needle? The fact, how does that work? I mean, and again, I do this really more to tease folks that practice faith and business because I do there's a dichotomy there. So tell me about that. How does it work for you?
That's a great question, and I get those kind of questions fairly often. We we have a tendency here, and I talk about it in the book, and I talk it to people here all the time. If somebody's not a good fit in a job and they're not performing well, we need to watch them closely and try to find out what their strengths are. Most people want to be successful and want to do a good job, with rare exception, I think. They're just not in the right place. So we go out of our way to try to get people in the right place. That's not to say we've never fired anybody or let somebody go, but we typically try a lot of different things before that happens, particularly trying to get them in the right place where their strengths are. And you get them plugged in right, they're usually much more happy or at least satisfied with their job. Um, yeah, firing people is terrible. You have to do so much these days to back that up, and you probably gonna get sued every time you fire somebody. So you know that. That's not the reason not to fire somebody. There's times where people do something ridiculous, and that's going to happen, but it's rare around here. Thank goodness.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for humoring me. I know it puts people on the spot sometimes, but I think Steve, you probably see it as well as I do when you see folks use sort of religion as sort of like a cudgel, and it goes both ways in that way. And I solely empathize too. It's like you want to live by the golden rule, treat everyone well, but then at the same time, it's cold hard business.
Yeah, and,
and
and it's funny you'd bring that up. We had one of our competitors one time all invited me over to their office, and bottom line was they were going to try to talk me into selling to them. And it's funny, the guy I'd known him and been around him a little bit, but I show up at his office, and he's got this big cross hanging out of his shirt. And immediately I said, he's playing me already, because he knows my faith thing, and I'd never known anything about his faith, but, I became very defensive about that, so
Oh, that is funny. What a great story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
We joked at the beginning how that you didn't have an entrepreneurial background, but you've obviously worked in this field of construction, of, manufacturing. Um, where did the other skills come from? Like in terms of finance and yeah, obviously the management side you were there, but like the sort of like the complex stuff that you usually have to farm out to people. And for many entrepreneurs, it's the world of having several hats. How did you manage that dance early on in the company? I'm sure now you've got people that handle a lot of that stuff, but what was it like early on?
Oh, it was tough. You nailed it right there. I had all this management background and scheduling and purchasing and all those things, but I did not have much administrative experiences at all. And financial part of that was really tough. While we were small, I could handle some of it. But yeah, one of the first hires I made after some production people was a controller because that was my biggest challenge. Um, so many things, and I deal with attorneys all the time now. I'm dealing with banks, and all those things were self-taught. I had to just go in, jump in, and get burned, to figure it out. Good question though, because that's a big part of it.
Yeah, because I think for many entrepreneurs, it's I know this sounds weird, but like you're a subject matter expert. You're an expert in that thing that you're doing, but that thing that you're doing revolves around many other little things that you're not an expert at. And so one of the like I said, I don't think I could ever be an entrepreneur. It's not in my family. But another part of it is the delegation. Like I've admittedly always said my entire life, I'm terrible at delegation. I don't know if it's because I not that I don't trust people, but it's just like I always feel, I've always had that edge. If you want to do something right, do it yourself. I've always lived by that. It's probably not the right way to do it. I'm totally aware of that. Um, Tell me about delegation. Was that tricky for you at first?
Yeah, yeah, it was because much like the best way to get it done and get it done right is to do it yourself. But there comes a time pretty early in a manufacturing business like this where you've got to start delegating. You just hit the wall. You just can't do any more than you're doing. And then you got to make good hires, and I like first controller I had, uh, he actually got us in trouble with some vendors because he didn't tell them the truth and told them he was going to send them a check and things like that. Then they started calling me, this guy's lying to us and uh, we don't trust him anymore. So early on, I really got burned with that, knowing how important it is to hire the right people for these things and be able to delegate comfortably and trust them.
Wow. I'm recently, Steve, over the last couple of years, first time homeowner. When I was growing up, my family had homes, but on my own, usually me and my wife rented. Um, and one of the things that you realize when you make that jump from renter to homeowner, you're your own landlord, so you've got to learn how to fix things and do like you can't just call somebody like, "Hey, the light bulb's out, please, please."
Yep.
You've
Yep.
got to fix that. So part of it is networking, and I know we use that phrase in terms networking in sort of like the white collar sense, but in the blue collar sense of networking is knowing who to trust, like who the right landscaper to call, who the right painter to call, who the right contractor to call. Tell me about that world of networking around in and around Masterwall. How the connections you made were probably the reason you're still here decades later because people trusted you. Not, it's the leader before the company. Tell me about and it sounds like you've had these soft skills. You mentioned the fact how empathetic you are, treating people right. But how important do you think that has been towards the legacy of Masterwall?
Well, the networking part is critical because, we're in Columbus right now, and this is where our home office is, and I've got friends and people that are in business that I could ask, who's a good heating and air guy, who's a good plumber, and the same thing was going on in Livonia, which is 125 miles away. The guy that I was leasing the building from was one of my partners. So anytime I needed to know something, such as a contractor that needed to come fix something, I'd go to him, and he'd been up there for decades, so he knew everybody that I needed. So that made it much easier, much easier.
That's great. That's great. All right. So part of the book is the word coach, and people are probably saying like, "Where's the
Mhm.
coaching part? What are you talking about? This guy, I don't have any sports." At the age of 45, you decided to coach basketball. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, first of all, I love basketball. This was boys' high school basketball, and I was at a little private school here in town. Um, I had 3 sons. A couple of them played basketball, but one thing as I watched them go through middle school, junior high, was I watched the high school coach, if he stayed 2 years, that was a long-term deal. So I said, "I don't want my sons to go through this thing and have a new coach every year." I played basketball, I know basketball, so I volunteered. They let me coach, then hired me to coach, and, so I had almost a 20-year career coaching high school basketball. And the parallels between coaching a team of young men and running a business they're very similar, believe it or not. You gotta know your people, you gotta put them in the right position, as we were talking about earlier. There's a administrative things you have to do. In fact, that was the horrible part of being a basketball coach. You had to coordinate things, you had to get travel plans together, help do scheduling, things like that. But they kind of paralleled. I loved coaching high school basketball. It was great. I just got to the point basketball got so big, I just could not do that and run a business this size.
So tell me how you pull that off, because I think for many parents, they see yourselves in you. They're like, "Oh, okay, I think I could squeeze this in," but not a
Mhm.
lot of people have a company that has hundreds of employees that he's got to look out for. Tell us about that precarious balance of obviously man of faith, family, business, and now you want to coach basketball.
Well,
How are your time management skills, Steve?
well, they were pretty good, especially back then. Obviously, they had to be. It goes back to I'd hired the right people. So, come 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon when I had to go to run a practice or travel to a basketball game, by the time I was doing that, I was very comfortable with the team I had here at Masterwall, and I could step away, and they took care of everything. And of course, the next morning there was usually plenty of things waiting on me. When I got back in, but it was a good distraction, particularly if you read the book. I talk about these near death experiences that were near death because they nearly killed the company. The basketball thing during that time was a great distraction, and it kind of broke me away from some of those problems. So the basketball thing's been a real plus.
What was your record over that 20 year winning record during your career?
Well, we made it to one state championship game. We lost by 1 point. We won a couple of region championships. Unfortunately, uh, I was probably about a 500
Okay.
winning percentage over the years. Had some really good teams and some not so good. Uh, I stayed so long though that they still call me the winningest coach in Calvary history, but it was simply because I stayed longer than anybody stayed.
Oh, well,
So
yeah, yeah. Like they say that basically you're an accumulator. You're there for so long that you just racked up some wins along the way. That's pretty
well
awesome.
said. That's
Is
correct.
there anything you miss about that, Steve? But the because I think we often say youth keeps us young. So I'm sure being surrounded by those young men for 20 years, in a way, sort of like was vitamin D to you. Like it energized you. I'm sure. Uh, what was it like after? Did you feel like a piece of you like sort of like fell off?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Not only the camaraderie with the boys that I was coaching and leading, but you start playing these certain coaches in schools and teams every year, and you actually build a relationship with those other coaches that you play year after year because they challenged me. They were very good. I had a very good competitive spirit with these guys, and we didn't hate each other and cuss each other, things like that. When we played them, it was a good rivalry. Shook hands, walked away. In fact, the book that I wrote, I sent several invitations for endorsements, and a lot of them were coaches that I used to coach against. So
No, that's awesome. So you were good to the other coaches too. You weren't just good to the players. Sounds
there
like.
you go.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that anyway. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's funny. I was just something just popped up on my feed the other day, Steve, and it was a interview from 2006 where where Leslie Stahl's speaking to the founder of Netflix, Reed Hastings, and this is right during the height of like the DVD craze, but right before everything crashed and everything went digital. And the reason I bring this up is that during the entire conversation, they were talking about how we're going to go from this world of actual like physical like media to digital media. And now, Steve, I'm sure you know is everyone calls it's streaming. Everyone, the streaming wars. How many how many streaming subscriptions you have? But this is 2006, and at no point, Steve, did they use the word streaming. They called it downloading because
Oh,
e- even they couldn't fathom where it was going. Netflix, gigantic company, probably one of the most valuable companies on the planet. And they didn't even know, they couldn't wrap their brains around what streaming was. Like to them, it was just like, oh, downloading a file of a movie. You've been, and so that was, so what 15, 20 years ago. You've been in this business for, 3, 4 decades. Is there something along the way that changed in the way you did things, whether it was internal or external with the company, where you're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to lead to that.
hmm. Well, back to one of those near-death experiences, our whole industry had to change the system, the wall system itself, and turn it into what we call now a drainage system because the system works so good. It's an envelope around the building, but if there was water penetration into the building, our system was holding the water in. It would cause bad
Oh,
things to happen with the if it was wood, etc. So our whole industry, after going through lawsuits, we had to all change our system, make it a drainage system. So that's one of the biggest things industry wide that changed. But we're going through right now. Putting in an ERP system called Business Central for taking care of all of our things in our business here. Yeah. Oh, how painful it has been to change. We went from what they call Sage software to this new ERP from Microsoft. And so far, what I see is great, but this last year and a half has been so painful. Just another one of those things. Technology just continues to evolve and change, as you know. And
yeah.
we're, and here I am at 71 years old. I really struggle to keep up with it, but thank goodness I've got younger sons and a lot of younger team members that handle it just fine. So
That's great. And in terms of the manufacturing, is it, I know you mentioned that there's been more restrictions and more regulation. Is it still the same old since day one? Like you're still kind of making the same stuff. It's just there's like a
yeah,
little more nuance to it.
yeah, we have some new products, but basically, 70-80% of it's the same thing we were making in 1987. So
Wow. And what, tell me about the biggest difference between the 87 and 2025 outside of the regulation piece in terms of your industry. Because we've all you've probably seen it better than anybody, the ebbs and flows of building. I remember there was like after 2008 there was like no more building. We're not building anymore. We've lost way too much in housing. And then all of a sudden like 2015, 2016, more building. And now 2024, no more building. So
yeah.
tell me about the peaks and valleys that you had to deal with in the industry in terms of volume, because obviously you're doing something right, but like and you mentioned these near death experiences, but like the ebbs and flows of the construction industry during these last decades.
Or, when I was with Drive It System and we're making a similar product back in the 80s, the big deal for EIFs was energy efficiency. We were having the oil embargoes and energy was going through the roof. So it just really took off. Um, Residential was the biggest thing we were doing. Then as time has gone along, we had the problem with moisture intrusion. It has completely switched. We do very little residential now. It's all commercial, basically, hospitals, multi-story buildings, hospitality, hotels, things like that. So it's drastically changed. And from about 2008, when the Great Recession started and things happened, it took the construction industry, particularly our industry, to almost 2014 to get back where we were dollar wise in 2008.
Wow.
It was tough. We had things like 9/11 happen. That was a mini recession, but for months, everything pretty much slowed down or stopped. Uh, so we've dealt with a lot of different things like that
Well,
over the
then you throw
years.
in a pandemic. How about how did the pandemic affect you guys?
Well, somewhat, not as much as some others because we were considered
Essential.
uh, essential, and plus it's an outside product, so that helps too. So most people were still working outside and doing those those different things. Of course, we had to adjust in the plant some things. Somebody tests positive, and we have to send several people home at a time and slow things down. It slowed us down. It hurt, but it wasn't as bad as say the Great Recession was starting in 2008. You know,
Yeah. How crazy does it feel if that was only 5 years ago, Steve? I mean, you're rolling off these landmark times like, the '08 recession, 9/11, the '80s, the energy crunch. Doesn't doesn't it seem like the pandemic was even further away from those times? Just because in terms of like our lifestyle shifts, how it went from like this like we were moving so fast to then stopping and then we're trying to find our way and now we're back to sort of like those pre-pandemic levels. Like how does that time frame feel in terms of like this, 70 something years you've been on this planet?
well, the older I get, the faster it gets, and that's just a fact. Yeah, these last 5 years, getting away from the pandemic, have been extremely fast. Of course, I remember all the inconveniences of that, but I just remember me and my wife. Of course, it took years for the restaurants to get back to any kind of normal. And I'm not sure some of them ever have,
No.
but it was in my 71 years one of the most drastic things that's happened for sure.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned your wife, and I always wrap up these conversations, Steve, by taking folks behind the dedication of the book. And you were a lucky man. You've dedicated it to Donnie Smithwick. This book could not have been possible without you. Tell me about Donnie.
Been married 51 years. We have our four children. Donnie is absolutely the best thing that ever happened on this earth to me. And thank goodness she's good, as I said in the dedication. She's a grammar specialist and very good with editing. She helped me out so much. But not only that, when you start a business like we started, I mean, I had no income there for a little while, when I lost my job. And it was pretty scary for not just me, but for her. And for me to say, well, I'm going to go start a business and we're going to make this thing work. She's been supportive from the beginning. At least she showed supportive. So I'm sure she had her doubts at times over the years, but she's been very supportive, always been right there. So thank goodness for her. Thank the Lord for her.
That's great. That's great. It's funny. It's funny. You mentioned how your wife helped you with your grammar and helped the book and stuff like that. So my wife, when I started writing my book, I told her, "Oh, I want you to wait to read it." She says, "No, no, no, no. I want to read it while you're doing the drafts." So as you know, with the book writing process, Steve, it has many incarnations. There's a lot of starting and stopping,
Yeah.
uh, and my wife read the book I think like 8 times before it actually was finished. And by like the sixth or seventh time, she's like, enough of this. I'm like, well, you asked to read the book. So tell me about Dottie, because I don't care about your journey as an author. You did it. It's all good. But like the people you got to drag into this, did she enjoy the process as much as you did?
I think she did originally when it first started. Plus, there was a lot of things about the business she didn't know, because she works in the business now, but that's only been the last 6, 7 years.
Okay.
So she didn't know a lot of these things. So it was kind of informative to her. But same thing as with yours. I'm reading the book through again. I might as well just make it a lifestyle at this point. But I asked her something about it the other day. I said, "Well, you can read this too and check it out for me again." And she said, "No, it's okay. No, it's okay."
She's over it. She's over
Oh,
it.
I bet she's read it at least 8 or 10 times altogether.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. Well, if you want to read it your first time, the book, Believer, Bulldog, Coach, An Entrepreneur's Journey of Purpose, Perseverance, and Loving People, is out now. His name is Steve Smithwick. Steve, thanks so much for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. Enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
And that's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Steve and our other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.